Coming up,
One thing that can be kind of traumatizing is to feel like you're all alone in it and like nobody else is witnessing you. You know how we treat meetings with others as so important? They're on our calendar. You and I showed up at a time today and we're doing this interview. What if you treated yourself with that same level of seriousness? Big reason people say that they get such a huge perspective boost when they have a child is because you're kind of getting to relive life.
welcome back to the show. We're so glad to have the wonderful Eva Orbuch joining us. She is a life and leadership coach, support people and organizations through transitions, sometimes using rituals, and also help them deepen their social impacts. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us, Eva. How are you doing today?
Thank you for having me on the Zhen podcast. I am doing really well.
For the audience and listeners who are not aware of who you are and what you do, will you please share a little background introduction?
Yeah. So I am a 36-year-old life and leadership coach. My background is I started actually my career as a public school teacher, teaching middle school in California. Um, and then I had a career as a community organizer working in a nonprofit. And it was a really amazing training to be on the ground in communities that are often forgotten about in the midst of the wealth of the Bay Area, of the San Francisco Bay Area. There's another side, which is all the people who are working class, who are often serving those with money. It's something that we may or may not like to talk about, but I had the privilege of working day to day with those folks and doing community organizing with them, which that was my training, was to just deeply listen to people's life stories. A lot of them were immigration stories, actually. And that's a big passion of mine, is immigration stories, actually. And that's a big transition that people go through. A huge one is to actually move countries. Um, and through that, I spent years listening to stories, working with people on how they can work to improve their lives in community, and facing a lot of systemic issues. And after years in that, I realized that I wanted to broaden out to helping all sorts of people and organizations under the common theme of how can I most support and rally behind somebody's goals and the visions that they have for their life. Um, and the commonality that everybody has is we all go through transitions, both big and small. And so I've developed a practice of being able to coach and consult people and companies and organizations on their transitions, big and small, when they're going through changes. How can they process that in a mindful way so that they get the most um, benefit, let's say, and the least suffering in that process?
That sounds amazing. Let's actually talk about going through transition in a mindful way and lessen some of the suffering. I personally find when I'm going through a transition, I tend to be overwhelmed. I think there's an element of not knowing what's going to happen, even though there's a deeper knowing this is going to be good. I sometimes feel my body rejects the change. So when we do feel overwhelmed during a transitional time, what is our body telling us by feeling certain type of emotions?
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. The coach in me is like, tell me more, Zen. What
Well,
transition?
ask me more questions. I will share.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious what transitions you tend to feel overwhelmed by. Is it like a lifestyle change, something that you hadn't planned comes upon you? Like, have you noticed any themes?
I would say relocating to a different city.
Mhm.
I spent a majority of my life trying different things out, and often they're with different cities and countries. I believe the reason why I do that is because I'm trying to figure it out what works for me the best. But whenever I do go through the transition, I get depressed
Mm,
because you build a life in a location and you say bye to those people, even though you know those people might not be in your life forever. They're not meant to be. Yet there's a part of me that died,
wow.
made me really sad to look back and see that kid went through so much, even though now it's building on top of it. There's a part of me wish I'm not changing. I wish I can just be who I am always so I don't have to go through this identity death.
Yeah, so there's a lot there, and I hear do you wanna just hear some of my reflections?
1000%.
Yeah, so I'm hearing, like, a lot of courage in you that you've knowingly and willingly put yourself through this situation a number of times of taking the big risk. That requires courage to make a huge change, so I would wanna know how you relate to courage and that quality. And number 2, I'm hearing loss. You know, you said that you literally used the word death, and that was on my mind is that every transition, especially leaving a whole life behind, is a loss. But even smaller transitions, like for me, I'm a new parent, so the loss of my non-parent identity, the loss of even when my child makes a big milestone, I have started wanting to honor those transitions rather than just zooming through them mindlessly. I'm like, let's pause. And I even wrote a blessing set like poem to be able to acknowledge, okay, she's now walking. She's not staying still anymore. That's a transition. So in you, I see courage and then honoring of loss, but perhaps not fully knowing what to do with that loss. And then the third thing that comes up for me is when I listen to you is do you feel like you're almost stuck in this pattern of having to leave places? What's the part of that that feels really authentic, and what's the part of that that's, like, automatic and no longer serving you?
That's why I love to talk to experts. I'm going to answer your third question by addressing the first question. Do I feel I'm stuck in this loop? Not until 2 months ago. And I do believe there was a part of me that was very courageous in trying things, but there's also my nervous system was looking for chaos.
Mm.
I think there was a unhealed child who, while growing up, relocated with his family every year.
Ooh.
So there was part of me wanted to keep the tradition going until I realized it's not sustainable and I couldn't build a life on top of that. So thank God for therapies. Um, I don't feel I'm in the same loop anymore. But when I do tell the story, I will say, yeah, very courageous.
Yeah, thanks. So there's that's so potent that this became this family tradition, but it was you were a child, so it was in a way against your will. But and then there's a part of you that became almost, like, addicted to keeping that going, or it became a part of your identity. So there's courage to picking up and starting new and seeking adventure and novelty, and then there's also at a point, and you realize this 2 months ago, where does it flip and the courageous thing becomes staying?
I wouldn't say I noticed 2 months ago. I would say I noticed it 4 years ago.
Mhm.
I think change takes time. I think 4 years ago, my nervous system was like so messy where you can't really pinpoint what's happening, but like everything is happening. And gradually, I start to try to understand the reason why I do certain things. I believe from not knowing to be aware took me maybe a year and a half. And then from there, it just you have to sometimes fall on your face over and over and over again. And one day you're just like, not gonna do this anymore. I am so exhausted.
Right, so you are actually becoming conscious of this pattern, so I'm guessing, and you tell me how this lands, but when you now live in a place, when you feel that voice come in and says, "It's time to pack up and go," now you're conscious of it, and what are you gonna do? What do you do when you hear that?
I think the answer is day to day life. I tend to make my current location more homey than before.
Mm.
Before, I'll be having some cheap sofa. Everything I bought was temporary.
Non-attachment. Yeah.
Right. But now when I buy stuff, I purposely, and that's a journey on its own where I have to convince myself to spend more money on quality items because I fundamentally believe I'm building a life.
Beautiful. So there's actually this edge you're pushing through of, I'm gonna do something maybe uncomfortable of spending more, and not just because of materialism, but because it represents my care and my rooting.
I do. And this year, for people who are listening to this, it's probably May, but when we're recording this is December 2025, debating if I should get a Christmas tree for my place.
Mhm.
Part of me feel, why would I spend that money doing this? I'm not home like 80% of the time. But then there's a part of me also feel, but this is your home, right? You put the effort in, so you are enjoying it. This is not for other people. It's not for show. You have fundamentally enjoy where you live. So that is something I'm working on right now to make sure I do things for me rather than I do things for the performance.
Love it. I love this Christmas tree metaphor, and a lot from that, and we could do a whole session on that, but I wanna hear what you end up deciding, and in a way, getting a Christmas tree is a ritual, right? It's a ritual that people engage in for the sake of, tradition and hominess and, holiday spirit. There's different reasons people do it. But what I hear you asking is like, should I engage in this ritual? Does it fit with how I saw myself and how I wanna see myself and how I wanna make home?
I never thought of Christmas tree as a ritual, but very that worked. That worked in my mind. I think that that made me think of this entire process very differently. Probably will get a Christmas tree
Nice, you already
because
solved that one.
right, because it's a ritual, right? I should lean into a ritual to help me to be more present and celebrate major holidays.
Yeah, and, it doesn't have to be even about the holidays, it can be, but it's like, whatever it is, keep your North Star in mind, but the specific thing that you're working on in your healing path is connection with home, right?
Yes.
It's like project, home, rooting, nesting, or whatever words you would put on it.
That's very true. So when we do feel overwhelmed, what is our nervous system or body trying to tell us? Is it against change or is it to warn us of danger or anything that you can think of?
Yeah, I think it means that there's too much to process in that moment. So maybe there's too much change too fast, overwhelm. I think I looked up the definition of burnout, and it's like too much too fast. Or maybe that's the definition of stress or overwhelm. You can use all of those words. Too much too fast. That can also actually lead to trauma, when our systems cannot process because there's too much too fast. And so your stress response gets activated. And I think what it's telling you is you need to slow down and have more softness and tenderness on your mental load, your emotional load, and your physical and spiritual. So I'm always thinking about the holistic, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. And I think some keys for wellness are to make sure that you are tending to each of those four areas. And so when we feel overwhelmed, perhaps like at least one or all of them are being overrided and not tended to. And your body is basically signaling, I have to pause and reprioritize self care. Otherwise, we're going to do more damage.
That makes sense. And how does ritual help us to facilitate the process and limit the time we get traumatized by being overwhelmed?
Mm, yeah. I mean, I'm obviously biased towards the power of rituals, but I think rituals can really help because they inherently slow you down and they are an activity to insert in between actions. Um, so, for example, like I was saying about parenting, can we take that example?
Yes.
Um, it's relatable to a lot of the population. So, there's constant change happening when you're a parent because you're watching a being literally grow. And if you never pause and life just barrels through, and a lot of people, you hear this cliche sentence of, I like blinked and they were an adult, which to some extent is natural. Life feels like it goes faster the older we are often. But if we take time to pause in between changes and say, I am going to do a little ritual, whether that's celebrating a birthday, that's a very common ritual, or something more creative that you design yourself. That actually allows your brain, body, nervous system, heart to process more. And I just want to step back and define what we mean by ritual because not everyone has the same definition of that word. There's sort of two connotations. One, people think of rituals as regular, repeated actions, like brushing your teeth. It's a ritual that you do like in the morning and before bed. But then there's also rituals, as in like one time ceremonies, right? Like a one time ritual to help you process or honor a transition that may never happen again. It may be a single moment. So, are we clear that there's like two ways to think about rituals? Both of them can have really healing potential.
And which one were you talking about when you were utilizing ritual to slow down time?
I think it applies to both. For example, a lot of people talk about a morning ritual or a morning practice, right? So many of us in modern life struggle with the tendency to wake up and immediately go on phones, and that impacts the energy for the day pretty negatively. So, a morning ritual could be a routine that you do consistently every day to slow down, connect with what really matters to you and who you want to be. That's a consistent ritual that can have a healing impact. But also, the other definition of ritual could be, I just went through a major transition, like I moved countries. I'm going to do a ritual to say goodbye to my old life and hello to my new life. That might happen just once. It's a unique ritual. Both have a really healing and mindfulness impact. But what I think happens is that one, we don't have an education on how to do these things. It's not something we're really taught about unless you happen to grow up in a culture that reinforces that. And two, it's kind of like a little countercultural and almost anti capitalist because capitalism wants us to just go, go, go like a machine. So why would there be time for rituals? So we need to actually intentionally choose to do them.
I love it. When you are working with your clients, what are top three favorite ritual loved by everybody that are beneficial to help people facilitate changes?
Every person is unique, so I really tailor make my ritual design with the person and what they're going through. But I would say some common ones that are successful is going to be I'm going to talk about something, two examples. One very kind of inane and basic but powerful, and one more kind of out of the box. First one, the ritual of having a meeting with yourself at the beginning of a period of time, like a week, a day, a week, a month, a quarter, or a year. So I talk about this like Russian nesting dolls, those dolls that come apart and there's another doll inside. That's how you can break down time, right?
That is so cool. For
Your
some
mouth.
reason, when you said that, I had a clip of Doctor Strange movie in my head. It's as if you're stretching time and see it visually. This is something you can control.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. So, a lot of people get really overwhelmed by like time and future planning, especially if you struggle with something like if you live with ADHD or something with neurodivergence, it can be really hard to think about the future. And so, one way of trying that is by having a visual of blocks of time today, this week, this month, this quarter, like every 3 months, and this year or 5 years. So everyone has different chunks of time that matter to them. Those are kind of conventional amounts in a year. And then the ritual would be committing to having a meeting with yourself. You know how we treat meetings with others as so important? They're on our calendar. You know, you and I showed up at a time today and we're doing this interview. What if you treated yourself with that same level of seriousness? You had a meeting at the beginning of the period of time and you sat down and planned and visioned and made sure that your plan, what's in your mind, is going to actually carry out in your efforts and in your time prioritizations. So during that meeting, you can do calendaring, you can do journaling, you can do strategizing. The ritual is having that meeting. And this has worked with myself, with many clients I've worked with in personal and professional situations.
That's awesome. I recently introduced meditation to my mother,
Mm.
who meditate way more than I do now. She does it every night, and she said to me one time that helped my practice is that I'm just trying to spend some time with myself. And I never thought of it that way. I always thought if I meditated, then my productivity will go up.
Hmm.
Then, maybe I will be more regulated and feel better, which is also true. But I think this concept of meeting yourself is critical because we do a lot of things for other people. We often talk about self love, but if you don't even know who you are, how can you love yourself?
Yes.
And I find those time to be transformative.
Yes. I love what you said about filling up your own self love cup so that you have also more to give to others or you have something to give. And I just want to name that it doesn't have to be some huge lifestyle change, which can make people not even try in the first place. Like what your mom did, meditating every day, that might sound impossible to a lot of people. But if you say, I'm just going to spend 5 minutes in a whole day, like 5 minutes today doing nothing. It doesn't have to be meditating, just sitting there, drinking a cup of tea or coffee and staring out the window. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at how much value you get from that tiny action.
I do that all the time. Some would argue I drink too much coffee. I definitely think morning time is very important to me.
Yeah. And then I just want to get back to the second thing I was saying was another example of ritual. So we had the first one is the self meeting. And then the second one, I work with a lot of clients going through professional transitions. And so, for example, worked with a client who was leaving many years in large corporate tech and they made the big leap to leave and go off and do their own path. That's a huge moment, right? And nobody's really going to understand it the way that person does. But one thing that can be kind of traumatizing is to feel like you're all alone in it and like nobody else is witnessing you go through that. Maybe your spouse or like your immediate family, but even them sometimes they don't get it. And so what we did is we processed a little bit of how this professional transition was going for them and how they wanted to show up during this period of time of like 2, 3 months before they started really working again. And then we also designed a ceremony, a ritual for them to do with a group of friends. It happened to coincide with a birthday. And then they did this whole super creative ritual of sort of mimicking corporate culture, like a boardroom. let's all play out what my professional life was, and everyone has roles, and we're almost doing like a play. And then I'm going to actually exit that and get to shed and let go of the things that made me feel constricted and not fully myself. And then they received a lot of like words of reflection and affirmation from their friends.
That's incredible. I would have never thought to do that as a way to ease into the transition.
Yeah,
That's
it was
amazing.
actually transformative for them. It really worked.
It's transformative for me, even though I didn't even go through it. I am not the same person anymore.
You keep in your back pocket.
Definitely. Before we move on, I did take notes on this one thing you said, and I always find this to be fascinating. And I wanted to hear your professional opinion on this. Earlier, you said the older that you get, the faster time goes. And I'm in my 30s now. I can see that. And I always wondered why that is the case. I do have my own guess, but I let you go first.
Man, great question. And I'm not an expert on this. I recently, maybe we can link in the notes to a piece I listened to about this where they actually studied, like an academic study about how your perception of time relates to.
Hmm.
But it's something about like memory and yeah, the spreading out of versus quickening of time. I'd love to hear your theory.
Well, first of all, please do send me the link. I want to hear about it and I want the link below this episode. My theory is attention. The older that we get, the more situation we went through, the less our brain get stimulated by everyday activities. I think that in our teens and 20s, a lot of things were new. So whenever a situation occur, it's life or death. You know, when I was in high school, I thought going to college was the biggest deal. If I didn't get into a certain college, my life is over. No matter how much people tell me it's not a big deal, I didn't believe them. So I put so much energy and focus on this one thing, and that made a memory. And I think that as we're growing older, the more resilient that we became, there's not a attention grabbers in our lives. We just kind of repeat the same life over and over again until something major happens and we have to shift.
Wow. Yeah, I feel I really resonate with what you're saying. And back to parenting, because it's what I'm going through, I see that that's a big reason people say that they get such a huge perspective boost when they have a child, is because you're kind of getting to relive life through seeing this new being, brand new being, get to have those first time experiences. And so that is one of like the selfish blessings of it versus I can relate to that. Like life so many things happen to you. It feels fast. And we know that modern life and technology and busyness feel like they speed everything up and that you stop kind of paying attention and feeling so intensely all the individual experiences. There's the blessing and the shadow of it, right? Because I think when you're older, you have more perspective and there's wisdom in that, right? So it's great that you now don't think that, say, if you were to get rejected from a job you applied to, it wouldn't be the end of the world. Versus when you're at that high school Zen, I just want to give you your high school self a little hug because you didn't know it wasn't the biggest deal in the world.
For all the listeners who are going through the same transition from high school to college, I'd like to share that as somebody who went through it, and also as someone who went to a top university, there are just more fascinating events and life lessons in the future. Don't stuck on this one thing. Do whatever you want to do with your life. Make it your own. If I have to choose, I don't know if I would go through the whole college again, just because like I feel like looking back, it wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like you're so reflective about your early young adult transitions, thresholds that you crossed. I could really imagine you being a good youth mentor. Have you ever done anything like that?
I have not, but I would say, going back to the university topic, the reason why I didn't really remember anything or felt it was as useful as I anticipated was because I took the easy way out.
Mhm.
I just wanted to party. I was like, this is it. This is my time to shine. And so I took communication and sociology, which were two very important majors, but to me, it almost came too natural. Like I didn't have to study as hard. But during that time, I really wanted to be a therapist.
Mm.
And I really wanted to go into the field of psychology. However, freshman year, you have to take only one biology, biopsych, or something like that. And I was like, I don't know. I barely passed CP biology in high school. Do I want to go through this? And that one decision altered my entire life.
Ooh, yeah.
If I were to have taken that one class, just didn't go out to party for maybe a quarter, I might be a therapist by now.
And how does that feel to kind of face that?
I feel like I'm gonna go cry now. This interview is over. I do believe in alternative universe. I definitely see a version of me talking with clients, helping them live a better life. So I do feel a little disappointed in its own way.
That's really interesting. Yeah, you are still deeply engaging in the world, the therapeutic worlds. And I just want to say it's never too late. Like if you could get to a point where you decide, I'm going to go for that dream, even though I'm not in college.
I actually had a period of time where I didn't work for almost 4 years. And I did think about becoming a psychiatrist, but then I didn't continue because I didn't want to study. So I guess there's certain part of me still just don't want to study. Maybe that is something it's meant to be in me. So I'm not becoming a therapist. Maybe everything did happen for a reason.
Yeah, you never know. I want to say that we could also do a ritual, design a ritual for you, and listeners can apply this to their own life. And what I'm hearing is that you are carrying around like a really old story that you missed out on this thing, and if only you had been willing to work harder, your life could have changed. Or that's a story. I'm curious if it feels old and tired and you're ready to let go of it, or if it still feels important to have. I'm not making a value judgment on that. But if you were ready to shift that, you could actually do a ritual to like psychically remove yourself from that. Does that make
We do
sense?
it now.
We could.
Yeah. Do a ritual if you don't mind. Let's just get rid of this thought of becoming a therapist.
Okay. So the title of this ritual is Let Go of the Story of Becoming a Therapist. So now we're going to think of some symbols. What are physical objects that remind you of this story? So for example, textbook, therapist notes. Um
I remember the cover of my CP biology textbook in high school. I don't even know I had this memory stored.
okay. So textbook, biology. What are some other symbols that you associate with this story? Like, I could have been happier. It doesn't have to be a physical thing, it could be like an image.
I have this image of the campus where I used to study in the library, where I decide to go to dinner with my friends rather than study.
Okay. So the place that represents like distraction and avoidance from the work. Okay. We've got textbook, we've got the place, and then is there something that broadening out from this particular therapy example, but something that just represents to you the old story of nostalgia and regrets and the suffering that comes from that?
Right? My car came into my mind
Mm. Why is that?
because I had a car. I just did a bunch of fun things.
Mhm. Okay. Now careful, because I hear that you might be getting, like, rehooked into the story of, like, "Yeah, it would have been better if I did that, and if I didn't do that." And what we're here to do is actually let go of this narrative, right? Like, accept. What we're here to do is just like step into acceptance. That is what happened. And you are living the life that has unfolded. And I don't need to carry around this big regret anymore. Would you agree with me? That's what we're here to do?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So now we've got our car, our textbook, and our dining hall. Yes.
Yes.
So what I want you to do is actually stand up and envision yourself as a car, and you're going to drive through those different stops on your life journey, your river of life. You're going to drive through them. And as you pass them, you will wave goodbye. And then after you leave them, they will no longer be relevant. And when you're waving goodbye, you can take a moment to thank them for what they did serve you for, if you want, or what they didn't serve you. So you're going to kind of just move through. And if it's hard to follow this on video, you can sit and then you can do this again later. But we're designing this ritual. These are the elements of it. What we just did is like a super fun co-creating. You see how we just built that together? That's an example of ritual creation in the context of coaching. And after somebody learns that in a coaching container, they can then use that in their whole life. It's a resource they can carry with them.
If people want to work with you, how can they find you?
Yeah, you can go to www.evaorbuch.com, EVAORBUCH, and you can contact me there.
Well, thank you so much again. I will see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here with me today on the Zen podcast. If this episode resonated with you, make sure you're subscribed and leave a comment with your biggest takeaway. That's how we grow this community and get these conversations in front of more people who need them. And if somebody came to mind while you're listening, please do make sure to send this episode to them. You can also find me on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. All linked below. Until next time, stay sharp, stay intentional, and be good.